Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Paper Towel Podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. We have a great guest. Her name is Anita Sharma, and she is a lawyer based out of New York. So, without further ado, thank you for being on my Paper Towel Podcast. It is a podcast about everything entertainment. We kind of cover all scopes in social media to actors, producers, and you. I mean, you're a big function of the entertainment industry and kind of protecting people's rights in a job that not many people actually know too much about.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So your title is a entertainment lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. Could you elaborate on what that is and what you do for your clients, like what issues you cover and help them with?
Sure. So, an entertainment lawyer is basically a lawyer that works in creative industries. And so work in either film, music, digital media, like any sort of creative industry, TV. And we do a number of things. So there's different types of entertainment lawyers. So you can represent talent. Like, for instance, I particularly represent talent, mostly my firm, and negotiate on behalf of them for their deals. Tons of influencers and digital content creators. You could work for like a big studio, or you could work for a company like Viacom, or you could work for a labor union like SAG. So there's all types of different sort of areas within entertainment law, but my firm primarily represents talent.
And so you got your education, much like everyone else who becomes a lawyer. Where did you get your education from, and how was that process for you?
Yeah, so I'm Canadian. So I went to school in Canada and went to undergrad and went to law school in Ottawa, which is our capital, and then moved to New York. So I enjoyed law school. I mean, I think you really have to start working to learn how to be a lawyer versus school. I think school teaches you how to work hard and read a huge volume of material and like write. But until you're on the job, you don't really learn lawyering skills.
How does the transition work from getting your law degree in Canada? Because I know in the United States it kind of works where you have like schools that will teach for the national bar exam, and then some that will teach like just for the state stuff. How did that work when you came?
Yeah, so I didn't even know I wanted to move to New York. So what happened was I just finished law school and a friend of mine had moved to New York City. So I came to visit her and it was my first time here. And I instantly fell in love. Like I knew I had to live here. And so I started to figure out what that process was. And lucky for me in New York State, coming from a foreign country such as Canada, all I needed to do was sit for the New York bar. So I believe like it varies from state to state. So I think in California, you actually, if you're from a school from outside the country, you actually have to have a master's degree, or you have to study in California for a year or do something like that. But New York State luckily didn't have that requirement for students from Canada anyway. So yeah, I studied for the New York bar, and it was really tough because I didn't know anything about the Constitution or anything like Americans, so to speak, because was born and raised in Canada. So that was a challenge, but interesting, and I managed to pass the first time I wrote it by some huge miracle. So I was lucky for that. I don't think I would have written it again. I think I would have just stayed in Canada. So lucky for me that worked out.
And I would say like for you, how you said that you represent a lot of social media influencers or digital creators. I think that's such a new kind of group of people that have kind of emerged in this entertainment industry. How did you kind of stumble upon representing them? Were you a part of a bigger firm and then they had you represent them, or did you actually just find that these people needed representing? How did you stumble upon that?
So stumble is the perfect word. It definitely was a happy accident. So it was 2013. I was living in Toronto, and there was a comedian I really liked on YouTube who I can't name, but I just thought she was cool and really funny. And I was like, oh, I wonder like how I find her. And I think this was sort of before, like, this was when social media was still kind of a hobby as opposed to business. And
Hmm.
it was really just YouTube and Facebook. And I think even with YouTube, people didn't really get it. Like it was a lot of cat videos and stuff still at that time. So and there's still a lot of cat videos, but at least there's other stuff too. But so I kind of just networked and managed to connect with her manager at the time. And she became a client, and it was just, it opened up that world to me because she was pretty big. So already, and then I just networked like crazy. Like I realized that there was a really unique opportunity there to represent talent in that space because it was emerging, right? So, it's hard. Obviously, I can't just, walk up to an actor who's well established and become his or her lawyer. Whereas in this world, it was like, wow, this is a new media,
Uh-huh.
literally, and with new talent. And so I was really fascinated by the fact that they could create their own content and just post it online, right? So I was used to representing like indie filmmakers in particular who had no leverage, right? Who were scraping to make a film, and then they had to sell their film to somebody, a distributor, in order for anyone to see it. And they would get very little money because they were so desperate to have their film seen. Whereas with social media, there was no gatekeepers, right? Like creators could just create content and then own the channel, whether it was on YouTube or whatever.
Mhm.
And that was really fascinating to me. So because it was sort of turned it on its head, what I'd been dealing with in representing talent that didn't have a lot of leverage. So that was really exciting. And then I just networked like crazy, spent a lot of time in LA, met a lot of people, managers and agents in the space. And that's, my firm got into it. And I was practicing law on my own at that time. So we got into it very early.
And I think much like how Bill Gates or Steve Jobs were like one of the first people into like the computer industry, you were one of the first people into representing these entertainers. So you kind of made a name for yourself when nobody else was. And so now everybody else trying to get into the game are already three steps behind you.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I've never been, wow, I've never been compared to Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. I'm not sure I'm quite at that level.
Well,
No, it's, yeah, we were, I got into the game early. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's now because it is a business and people recognize social media as a business and that you can make a living. And it is actually a career for many people. A lot of kids these days growing up are like, I want to be a YouTuber, it's a
yeah.
job. So yeah, we were lucky. It was definitely a happy accident. And but we sort of ran with those opportunities as they came, which I think was important too. And now, my firm is very well established in the space, and we work with all the major management companies and agencies, and we share multiple clients with, agents and managers. So it's exciting. Every day it's something new. It's really interesting.
And I think you really harped on a good thing, and something that I really like talking to people about is just networking and how you never know like who you're going to meet when you're going to meet them. Somebody that you meet right now could end up becoming like the next big star, or they just end up becoming another friend. But it's just constantly getting to know people and contact and like communicate with them. And like you said with that, with the first comedian that you met, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I want a job from her. It was like, oh, I really like her and I want a relationship with her. And I think that's like a huge difference that you made, that made you more successful, because I feel like a lot of people who network with just the purpose of getting the job from them, it really comes off as not very genuine. But for you, on the other hand, you kind of created a relationship with your partners. And I think that's really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, I love to network. Like I love to meet people, and I'm genuinely interested in what they are doing. And, a lot of people have helped me along the way. And now that I'm in a position to help people, I like to try to help people. And everyone that reaches out to me, I will respond to. And
Mhm.
I think that's really important. But yeah, networking, especially in the entertainment industry, this industry is 100% relationship based, and it's all about who you know. And you don't, and I don't say that in the sense that you have to be a big shot at all,
Mhm.
but it's just about who you know and who you're talking to and building those relationships. Because I agree, like you just never know, where anyone's going to end up. And it's also like I do feel like I learn from everybody I meet, and so that process is also important to me.
For me, it's really interesting to see how people in this entertainment industry network, because not everybody is the son of an A-list celebrity or daughter of an A-list celebrity. And so we had a I had a girl that I just interviewed a couple weeks ago where she was an actress, but before she could like actually get into bigger roles, she was an extra like a lot of actors are to make money, and she would
Mm.
show up to a scene 4 or 5 like hours beforehand just to talk to the crew before anybody actually even started filming. And so I think that's really interesting from the entertainment standpoint of um, how you get to know people. It's a really interesting kind of concept.
Yeah, and I think it's also how you approach people, right? If you approach people in a way where you're respectful of their time, where you ask them questions about themselves. So somebody told me a long, long time ago that people love to talk about themselves, and that's true, and I think if you approach people in a respectful way, most people will respond. It might take a while to get a response, but they will respond. And I think that's really important is the approach.
Hmm. A question that I had that I really wanted to know is, as of right now, are there a lot of lawyers that kind of define themselves as entertainment lawyers, or is it still a very small kind of niche kind of field that people go into?
Yeah, it's a very niche field and it's still very small. Like even in New York City, there's, very limited number of entertainment lawyers versus other types of lawyers, like litigators, personal injury, real estate, et cetera. It's a very small group, and that's why it's so hard to break into. And it's also, an area that a lot of people want to work in, but it is small, so it's hard to break into. But yeah, it's still very, very niche.
Hmm. And for you personally, do you have a preference on who you like to represent? Do you like representing more actors or producers or YouTubers? Do you have like a preference?
So I mean, I love representing influencers and digital content creators for the
Hmm.
reasons I was talking about before, that they own their channels, they have a ton of leverage. We're lucky that all of our clients are creating really interesting content that like I genuinely like to watch.
Hmm.
And so, for us, what we look for in new clients isn't big numbers or anything like that. Our clients are all across the board. We have some huge ones. We have some micro influencers. We have, a wide range and all across genres. So, chefs and tech people and travel bloggers, mommies, like the whole works, so that, the genre and the numbers don't matter. It's for us, it's like, is this person interested in building a business and using their social media influence to do that? So understanding that there might be a shelf life to that social media influence, and recognizing that this is now the time to build those businesses, to do those, licensing deals or co-branding deals or write books or have their books optioned, whatever. There's a whole range of things that our clients are doing.
And how would a client find you, or how would they get in contact with you if they really wanted you to represent them?
Sure. I mean, we have a website and there's like a general, contact form on that website, but generally it's again through word of mouth. We do very little advertising. And so it's really, we do no advertising actually. I've just kind of started to get out there and do things like these podcasts and stuff more, but yeah, it's really word of mouth. So, a lot of our clients have representation already in the form of managers or agents or both.
Mhm.
And so a lot of our clients come through people that we've already have those relationships with. But people can reach out to us through our website.
From your own personal experience, how do you like coming onto these podcasts and then talking about what you guys do? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do. Sure. I mean, I haven't done it. I just started like a few months ago. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to sort of put the brakes on and kind of be a little bit introspective and talk about what we do. I think it's a nice break. It's a change of pace.
It is.
And I'm happy to sort of try to impart whatever knowledge I have that can help people. Like I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the message that I'm trying to spread too, is that there's this whole entertainment field that only a couple years prior, like people actually saw it as being a big kind of career. And even when I was like growing up, a lot of it was like it's very far-fetched for you to even get into this field because
Mhm.
not many people understand the behind the scenes part of it and all the different people that kind of make it all tick in order to make it such a big industry.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think a lot of parents want to discourage their kids because they don't want them to be starving artists, but they sort of don't understand that, like you just said, there's a lot of different roles and there's a lot of different types of jobs and things that you can do within entertainment. But I think there is that sort of belief that, you're going to be starving, you won't be able to make a living. It's sort of feast or famine. But
Mhm.
there's definitely ways to make a living, and it's not the easiest industry. You have to love it, I think, to do it, but there's definitely avenues that you can achieve success. And so what do you like, what are you interested in doing in particular?
I really like being able to create a video or create something like this podcast and being able to put it out and then see how other people react to it. And I think that's what a lot of us like as entertainment kind of group of people. I could never do the acting realm just because of what I've heard from other actors in LA, where it's like you go out for 100 auditions and you get like 2% of them. And I think that would just be hard to do just over and over and over again. And I like just having this vision and not having to like depend on somebody else to envision it. It's like if I want it this way, it's going to end up this way instead of like, oh, he wants me to do it this way and I don't like it, but I have to do it in order to pay rent, um,
Right.
kind of stuff.
You like your creative freedom.
Yeah, it's and I like being able to like with this podcast, I like being able to reach out to people or people reach out to me and then I get to like investigate who they are as a person and then decide like, hey, I think this would be really cool for the podcast. And luckily for me, I have a really good team that will help with a bunch of other smaller minor things that I'm not as good at, but is kind of surrounding yourself with those people that really do help you.
Right, that's great, good for you.
So what do you like doing?
I love doing what I do. Actually, I'm really lucky. Yeah, I think the favorite part of my job is negotiating. I love to negotiate, and
Uh-huh.
so especially like high level deals. When we've closed deals with Netflix, with Paramount, with Quibi. Um, so those, with Discovery, with those deals are lots of fun. And it's like you're coming in and you're advocating for your client and you're negotiating, at a really high level with very experienced people, and I love that challenge.
I think that would actually be really interesting too, is to see the negotiating process um, in terms of those bigger deals, like the people that you have to go through, or you're not. I don't.
Yeah. No,
I
I mean, you're dealing with a lot of personalities also, right? So it's like you don't know what that personality is like on the other side, and there's sort of different negotiating styles. You have people that just sound angry all the time, and then you have people who are like super friendly, but kind of like sharks underneath. And it's hilarious. You sort of come across all kinds of different people, but with experience, you learn how to sort of navigate that. And then I think negotiation is a skill that can be taught, and so that was also my favorite course in law school. And I think it scares a lot of people, but it shouldn't, because it's not always about conflict. It can be a conversation, and I think that's how I try to approach it. As when I'm negotiating those types of deals or any deals, try to negotiate it as a win-win for my client and the other side. Because ultimately everybody just wants to make stuff, at the end of the day, and create content. And so it doesn't have to be adversarial.
yeah. I never really thought of the negotiating process like that, but you kind of put it into a perspective where it isn't as aggressive as some people make it seem. Sometimes it is, but I mean, like yourself, like a good lawyer ends up making it a win-win for both sides. So then both parties want to continue their partnership for long after that deal is finished.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so important. And you hit the nail on the head. It's like the negotiations and the contracts are just the beginning. Then you have to work together and you have to make stuff and hopefully make great stuff. And
Mhm.
so it's not going to help if you hate each other after the contract signed, like that's not helpful. But some clients, they want lawyers who are sharks, and that's a certain approach. There's definitely, I've been in negotiations that have been a little bit more hard nosed than others. But again, it's thankfully most of the time it's not like that.
Mhm.
And it's really about, I always say information is power. I mean, I didn't come up with that on my own, but that saying is so important. And the more you know, the better that you can negotiate, because you just understand the deal and the deal terms and the industry, so you don't have to be a yeller, you don't have to be mean, because you know what you're talking about. That's kind of the bottom line.
Like you said, like the information is key. It's knowledge and stuff like that. And I really thought it was interesting because I would constantly listen and talk to a bunch of people that I made connections with that are TikTokers and YouTubers and are making careers of that in LA, and kind of talking about like what they get, like kind of trying to figure out their worth, because somebody with a million subscribers on YouTube is going to get paid because of their genre a little bit different than somebody who has a million followers on Instagram. And so it's just trying to find that worth. And somebody who talks about one thing on YouTube and has a million subscribers may get paid a little bit more than somebody who has a million subscribers and does something entirely different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still, digital media is still like the Wild West, right? Like everyone is still trying to figure it out. These new platforms are popping up. I mean, deals are being like they're, structured in new ways. Like there's just new types of content coming out, and branded integrations and brand deals are a perfect example. I mean, TikTok is now the hot platform for brands to be on, right? So how do you figure out those deals? I mean, it's exciting for me to be like on the cutting edge of that, and like, how do we structure this deal? What should my client get paid? I mean, there are no set rates, to be honest. It's exactly what you said. It's like, what type of content is the client doing? How much engagement do they have? Like, I think engagement today is far more important than the number of followers that you have.
Yeah. Like I was going to say with TikTok, I found it really, really interesting is that so many people can kind of blow up on that platform very, very quickly. And so somebody who posts a solid like 3, 4 videos and gets a million followers, like, yes, they have the million followers, but their engagement for their next 20 videos may be back down to 10,000 views a video.
Mhm.
And that million followers can get misconstrued by companies that are trying to get into the social media thing to begin with. So they may pay this new person who got a million followers and get zero engagement, and then there's somebody who has the same amount but has had a solid engagement where they get 120,000 views per video. And I think that's also really, really interesting to kind of sit and look at. And like you said, engagement is more important than the actual following count.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think brands, they're still learning, but I think they've come a long way, right?
Mhm.
Since, back in like 2011, 12, 13, like I think they're more savvy now. I think they've hired people that really understand social media, younger people who kind of live on social media and consume it and understand how it works. So I do think brands have become savvier and are not necessarily just throwing their money around. But I also think they recognize that the social media platforms are where the eyeballs are, so that's where they need to be. So they're still very active in those spaces. I think just smarter about it.
And so, being an entertainment lawyer, are there certain things that you know and are like very familiar with that another lawyer who just says does criminal law wouldn't know about this entertainment law?
Yeah, I mean, every area of law, just like medicine, is specialized, right?
Uh-huh.
So I couldn't practice criminal law, right? I don't know the nuances, the ins and outs, the industry standards, et cetera. And so it's the same for entertainment. In entertainment, we do a lot of intellectual property work. It's an industry that's very casual. It's not like working at a big bank or something that's very conservative. It's very liberal, it's very progressive. So there's sort of these, there's knowing the legal aspects. So say like intellectual property, copyright, trademarks, or contract law that is specific to entertainment law. But then there's also knowing the industry, right? Like the industry you're in, and what that's like, and sort of understanding it and how it works. And that helps you negotiate as well. So just as I can't practice criminal law, criminal lawyer can't practice entertainment. And it's just like, an eye doctor can't sort of operate on your heart.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, they can possibly, but I don't think it would be a great outcome. I don't know.
How long would you say that it took you to become this, have an expertise, so to say, in entertainment law? How long does that, like, how long did it take you, or how long would it take somebody who is a lawyer to just specialize?
Yeah, it depends on sort of what path you take. I think if you're lucky enough to start out at an entertainment law firm and you're working with people who are very experienced, you're probably going to learn very quickly.
Hmm.
My path was a little bit different. I had some stops and starts. I started at a big firm. I wasn't very happy there. And then went off on my own and, tried to build a practice, and that was tough. And then I went to film school. So my path was a real zigzag to sort of end up where I am. I would say it took me probably about 10 years before I really felt that I had built up an expertise through experience, because I had taken some breaks sort of along the way. So it really depends on where you sort of land after law school, and then like what that looks like in terms of how quickly you can get that experience.
So you had mentioned that you had gone to film school. What was that kind of experience like for you to see that little other side of it, and that wasn't just black and white law, but it was
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was really life-changing for me. So I went to the Canadian Film Center, and they had a one-year program where you could get a producer certificate, and it's a, really prestigious school in Canada. And so it was exciting. They took 5 people from across the country for the producers lab. So it was competitive to get into. And I really was very interested in producing, and produced a short film that premiered at the Toronto Film Festival and sort of traveled around the world, and then produced an indie low budget comedy that got picked up by Entertainment One. And so, it was an awesome experience. I think learning being on the other side of the table, right? Being the producer and learning the technical and the creative aspects, and like script writing and character arcs, and 3-act structure. I mean, that was incredible. And I think I realized sort of after a few years of indie producing that as much as I sort of loved it, I think what I loved more was the business behind it and the legal behind it. And I thought, it sort of cemented my passion for representing creatives. And I think I, have that unique experience of actually understanding how hard it is to create content, and how challenging it is, and how everything is about story, and it's all about a good story and storytelling. And so that's why I'm particularly passionate about representing talent, because I know how hard that creative process is by, having that experience on the other side of the table.
That probably is such a defining moment in, I think, what it would be like a lot of people's lives, is just kind of stepping back and seeing stuff from a different perspective. And um, it really does make you respect like what you do for a living, because you now know like, hey, this is what I want to do with my life, and this is where I am, and this is where I love to, what I love to do the most. And I think that's really, really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was really lucky to have that opportunity to be able to produce, and I would still love to produce. I just don't have the bandwidth. But maybe an executive producer capacity. I don't really want to do hands-on day-to-day producing, but I do
Uh-huh.
want to be involved in making stuff. It's just, again, a bandwidth issue where I just don't have time right now. But maybe down the road, like, I'll get back to it. But yeah, it's you definitely have to try different things to sort of figure out what the right path is for you.
And so with more and more influencers turning their kind of brand into an actual business, how would you tell somebody, or educate them on how to actually protect what they've built?
Sure. So, talking about intellectual property, for example, so like your social media handle, if you have followers, like, a certain number of followers, I mean, that social media handle, which is probably the same across platforms, is has value, and it's an asset and you can trademark that. So, that's one way to protect your content. Another way is, to read the contracts that you sign, right? So, I think a lot of influencers get excited when they get a brand deal and it's, a few $1,000s and they're just starting out and they just sign it without actually reading the contract. And, they could be signing away ownership of that content. It's just, if you should own the content that's on your channel and you should license it to a brand. So there's, that's a way to protect yourself. So there's sort of a number of different ways. I think once you reach a certain level, you should definitely use an attorney. And, it doesn't obviously have to be me, but anybody who has experience that can help you protect yourself legally. Because once you sign a contract that, imposes legal obligations on you, and it's important to protect yourself in that way.
What would you recommend as once you, like you said, once you get to a certain level, you do recommend using a lawyer? And at what capacity would you say is a good time for somebody to start using a lawyer?
I think once you start to get a lot of contracts, once you start signing things, once you start creating content that has value that you want to protect, that's definitely the time.
And so what would it mean for somebody to be represented by your firm? What does it mean to have that kind of name behind an influencer?
I mean, I think that, when you have representation, whether it's a manager or agent or a lawyer, I think people take you more seriously, right? Because it's sort of a validation. It's like, okay, well, that person was able to get representation. Somebody wanted to work with them and believes in them, and their ability to grow and their, ability to create really great content. So, when you have representatives, like an attorney, you have somebody that's going to advocate for you, right? So, a lot of creative people, quite understandably, are conflict averse. They don't want to have those conversations with brands. They feel like, they're not very good at it. And it's frankly, it's not their job. I mean, I'm not great at creating content. So what I want for my clients to do is let me worry about the business and legal, and you do what you do best, which is create. I'm not going to become a YouTuber anytime soon. So
Oh,
it's like, just focus on creating your content and let me worry about that. So that's also, it takes that off your plate as a creator, right? If
yeah.
you don't have to worry about that stuff and you have somebody who's going to advocate for you and fight for you and like get you better rates, etc. So I think that's why it's helpful to have like people in your corner that can do that. And then it takes the awkwardness out of having to negotiate directly, with brands and sort of fight for your value. I mean, that's difficult for a lot of people to do.
Yeah, because from the influencers that I've met and I've actually got made relationships with, for them, they're some of like the nicest people, and then to for them to have to like worry about working with X company and they want to pay them like $2,000 for a campaign,
Mhm.
and they go, well, I think that I'm worth $10,000, and then the company just, it's like a lot of, they feel like there's too much friction between them and the company to actually have that um like open relationship of give or take. And I think having a lawyer does actually help it a lot, because now it's like you're going through my person that's going to fight for me and I don't have to do it directly.
Yeah, absolutely. It removes the awkwardness. And people will take a creator more seriously, right? Because they're like, oh, that person is represented. Like they're actually really thinking like a business and acting
Mhm.
like a business. And so, I think it helps in many ways. But mostly it just takes it off the talent's plate. They don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. And so when looking at lawyers, are there certain qualifications or certain things that you should look at a lawyer? Because obviously if you're a big content creator, you can go to any lawyer and then they'll try to conform to being an entertainment lawyer. Are there certain things that you should look for as an entertainer or influencer to be like, okay, this entertainment lawyer is a legitimate entertainment lawyer?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you should definitely look for an attorney that has experience in entertainment, right?
Mhm.
So, I have a lot of clients who come to me and they say, "Oh, well, my uncle was doing my contracts and he works in real estate." And, you know, and probably wasn't doing a great job, just as I wouldn't with a real estate deal, because they didn't really know the industry and what
Yeah.
the standards are and the nuances. So I think it's definitely look for a lawyer that has experience. Ask the questions. Like ask, like, some lawyers can disclose who they work with and at least give a couple of names or whatever. Ask, like, who do you work with? I mean, the best thing to do is ask your friends, like fellow content creators, who are they working with? Do they like them? Like if they're working with anybody. And again, like the word of mouth thing is so important. And just like really make sure that attorney has experience in the area that you need it.
Yeah, that makes it really does clear up a lot of things for people who are unsure about the next step when they've kind of reached this new ceiling, um,
Yeah.
how to kind of handle stuff. Because um, if you're just a kid from Utah who's just creating YouTube videos who is just kind of blown up, you yourself as an individual, even though as much as you think that you can handle it, you really have not like gotten the tip of the iceberg of this whole entire industry. And so it's kind of nice for kids like that to actually understand, like, okay, this is the steps that I need to take just to make sure that um, that I'm not in it for 3 months and then get spit out by the industry, and you can kind of
Right.
protect a couple things and protect yourself and actually make it a career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's interesting with lawyers because people have this impression that if you're a lawyer, you just means you're a lawyer and you can do anything,
Yeah.
and any type of law, as opposed to doctors where you would never do that, right? Like, you would go to a doctor that specializes in what you need. And I think people don't understand that law is 100% like that. You need to go to a lawyer that specializes in whatever you need.
And even then it's like there's more kind of subdivisions of law. You could have a contract lawyer who deals
Mhm.
with contracts but doesn't necessarily understand the contract law of entertainment. They may
Yeah.
understand the contract law of like Coca-Cola making an agreement with Walmart or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you should ask, the question of experience, like what types of deals have they worked on, in general. Again, they don't have to disclose client names, but they can say, oh, I closed a option and purchase agreement with Netflix for a client, like those are just, you can ask general questions about what type of deals an attorney has worked on.
Mhm. And so, you as an individual, do you have any words of advice for somebody looking at getting into this field?
Sure. So, we started out talking about networking. So,
Uh-huh.
networking is really important. Get out there and talk to people. Now that we're getting out of this, COVID mess, hopefully, hopefully there'll be more events and there'll be more things, whether it's like at your college or, if you, wherever you live, like cultural events, etc. Like get out there and meet other creative people and talk to them and talk to as many people as you can. Reach out, reach out to people on LinkedIn, and like I said, just be respectful and say, hey, what you do is really interesting. I would really love to ask you a few questions. I know you're super busy. I only want like 10 minutes of your time. That sort of approach is really helpful. I mean, when people approach me like that, I give them way more time because I'm like, thank you for recognizing that I'm busy and not asking me for an hour,
Yeah.
right off the bat. Like, I appreciate that. So yeah, network as much as you can. And, just people, I think, are so focused on numbers and likes, and just focus on creating good content. That is key,
Mhm.
like it doesn't, like, people start worrying about like brands and deals. How am I going to do this? How am I going to get it? How am I going to start making, $5,000 a post or whatever? Like, just focus on content. Always, always, always work on creating your content, being consistent, getting on the new platforms. Instagram reels are now big and like everybody's doing it. And you need to do it, to sort of be rewarded by the Instagram algorithm. So it's just understanding those things, but don't lose sight that the content is so important.
Mhm. And I think um, from what I've learned, especially, it's like you may like put out 3 videos that do really really well, and then you take 2 weeks off, and then it kind of just dies down. And it's like if you constantly kept going, then and make good content, then it ends up rewarding you in the end. And I think um, to always be persistent, and like you said, not necessarily look at the end goal right away, but look at how you can like improve yourself day in and day out.
Right. I mean, look at, study your content, right? Study your numbers. Like, what did people respond to? What did people really like, that you were doing? And it's like anything else, right? If you want to be good at it, you have to do it consistently, and you have to make mistakes. You have to learn from them, and you have to like practice. And so if you really want to do this as a job, like a full-time job, then you have to do it as full-time job. All of my clients, this is their full-time job, and they work their asses off at it, and that's part of their success. And they're also extremely professional, and they deliver on time, and all of that stuff is really important as well.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's a lot of a lot of information that people just need to understand. Is just like you said, be consistent and be like extremely respectful from when you're trying to make connections, and like never stop, because once you stop, then you kind of have to rebuild it all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
And that looks like it's all the questions that I have. So thank you for being on.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one. Take
You,
care.
you too.
Bye.